are good to go whenever you're ready, Mr. Jeck.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I can go ahead and start now. So the way I wanted to do this was just since this is more focused on like counterplay, I feel like it makes more sense to just go through an overview of kind of like what Bridget's trying to achieve in neutral, and what her game plan is and how you can build a strategy against that, and then go into more specific counterplay for things like her Okazeme and her pressure. And then I was gonna do like open questions in the back half, but if we don't have anybody, then uh,
I got a list of questions regardless. Don't you worry.
oh, sick. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna dive into it then. I'm gonna make it so this Bridget isn't crouching. It's aesthetically look weird, but anyways, Bridget in neutral. What is her game plan? So I'd say if you're kind of trying to think about how to form a game plan against Bridget and figuring out like what you should be doing in the matchup, the entire game plan pretty much for every character revolves around the yo-yo. I'm going to turn off that DP because that's going to get really annoying. Um, so how she's allowed to use yo-yo in neutral is really. How did I turned off the wrong one.
Oh, it's a block, yeah.
So whether she can get away with using this version of the yo-yo or whether she has to use this version matters a lot, and how she can use them and how characters can fight against them. So I'm just going to give a really quick overview of how yo-yo works first. So if you're not familiar with it, she has two versions of the yo-yo. The first one is a fireball. It's got a hitbox on the way out, and it's a really good fireball. It goes really far. It does pretty good damage. It does 40 damage now. They upped it from the last patch. Um, and it's a very strong fireball. It's honestly one of the best fireballs in the game. She can do it from the air as well. She can throw it at angles, just a set angle up or down, depending on if she's in the air or not, or she can throw it straight. But just a very strong standard fireball. Um, but the caveat with it is that when she throws it, it stays on screen. So while it's out, I can't throw another one. I'm just stuck with this. But I get access to this move, rolling movement, which is very powerful and gives her another way of playing neutral around that. Uh, so that's kind of the trade-off for it being a very strong fireball, is you can't just like throw it over and over again. Um, by default, this one stays on screen for 4 seconds. So it'll be there, and then it comes back with no hitbox. But if she throws the yo-yo and you block it, um, if you hit her, it goes back to her. And if you make her block, if you make her block, same thing, it goes back to her. So doing that gives her access to the yo-yo again, but then it also shuts off her rolling movement. So there's kind of a question of which one you want to do. It's going to be pretty matchup dependent. But in addition to the Fireball version, she also has the kind of trap version, 214S. So this one has a 2-second timer instead of a 4-second timer, and it has no hitbox on the way out, but it has a hitbox on the way back. And this one kind of seems on the surface like it's just kind of an Okazeme tool, but in practice, it's actually incredibly strong in neutral now. And the reason for that is it's pretty safe, so it's kind of hard to punish her for doing it. So if I have her just set up and do this, she recovers pretty fast. I should have had her block, but yeah, she recovers pretty fast. There's not many characters who can actually punish her for doing this unless they're preempting it. So in practice, she can get away with it a lot, and because it goes so far, she can set it at like this range, and it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem because, once it's on the screen, it comes back at a set interval, and you really don't want to block this. Because if you block it, that just gives her carte blanche to start doing pressure. She can also like preempt you doing stuff. And the most important part of it is she can jail you into rolling movement, which is the special she gets access to when the yo-yo is on screen. So this special. And this special is kind of the reason why yo-yo is so threatening. So if I have this, we're just set to block. Okay. I'm gonna do this. If she blocks this, Bridget is actually, I think, plus 16 here. So she can kind of do whatever she wants. You can do close slash, and I can set it up so that the... Actually, I'm not going to do that, but in theory, like if you try to DP after that, it's just this is gapless. So at the very least, she gets good pressure that way. But the really scary part of rolling movement is that she gets this as a follow-up. So she can do JD after hitting in the air, and that is gapless. So you can't contest that. You just have to block high. But she can also go low with 2K. And these two options are so dangerous because they hit on the exact same frame. So if you ever block rolling movement, she gets an unfuzzyable mix-up off of it. And if she hits the mix, if she hits the low, she can just do 2K, 2D, and then go into Oki. If she hits the high, she gets kind of a version of that, where she can do the safe jump. It's hard to demonstrate with the yo-yo out, but let's see. Yeah, she gets a version of it where she gets to do a safe jump with that. It's not quite as good Oki as the low version, but she gets a lot more damage off of it, so it's kind of a little bit of a trade-off. But the general point is that it's an unfuzzyable mix-up where both options are pretty threatening, and both options are also pretty decent on block. The low option is a little worse because she doesn't really have any good follow-ups off 2K that are gapless. So if you're a reversal character and I want to do low route and I try to like autopilot 2K 6H, you can actually just DP me out of that or hit me with a super. And same thing, like 2K 2D is a gap, 2K 6K has a gap. So for low pressure off of this isn't too threatening, but it's still decent. It's still decent pressure. And if someone is willing to reversal on 2K, you can bait it out by just doing empty 2K. So it's not the end of the world. And then if she goes for the high version and it's blocked, this is just really good for her. Because, well, I didn't show it there, but if I do this, it actually links into close slash and is completely gapless. So you get really good pressure off of it if they block the overhead. And off of close slash, you can do a lot of stuff. You can run standard stagger pressure. You can do go into 2S, which is a double hit low, which is really strong. You can go into 2K, which is a frame trap. You can do 6H, which goes into yo-yo throw and is pretty safe. You can even do stuff with BRC that sets up mix-ups and jails into another rolling movement hit. So she has really good pressure off of this. And so the basic idea to kind of circle back is you really just never want to block this move if you don't have to, because it just lets her start her turn even if you guess correctly, and she gets to just keep running pressure basically for as long as she is metered. And so in neutral, there's kind of a split in matchup theory between characters who can deal with this move and characters who can't. So if you play a character like Axel or Happy Chaos, those characters can force her to block from full screen by just like shooting her with the gun or hitting her with one of their long normals. And the problem with that for Bridget is, even if she blocks, the yo-yo comes back, but it doesn't have a hitbox. So for her, it's kind of pointless to set the yo-yo if she's just going to block it. So characters who can force her to block really don't have to worry about this too much. So besides characters with long normals, that also includes characters like Ram, who can kind of just like pull up on her really fast and hit her with a disjointed normal pretty safely. So if your character can do that, congratulations. This matchup is a lot easier for you than it is for the rest of the cast. But most characters can't do that very effectively. So if I set this yo-yo at full screen, most characters have to find a way to deal with this, and there's a few kind of different forms of counterplay available to you. The easiest one, I think, if you really just don't want to deal with this at all, is you can kind of just try to get out of range. So if you're outside of the range of the yo-yo when it's set, then when it comes back, it won't hit you. You don't have to worry about her jailing you into anything. You can just kind of ignore the yo-yo. And so that's good for characters who don't really mind giving up the space. So if you're playing like maybe Testament, for instance, and you're trying to zone her out, it doesn't really matter if you're moving yourself a little further back because you can use that space really well. But if you're playing a character like Soul, who needs that space really badly to get in, then this is kind of just an emergency option. But it's always there if you really just don't want to have to deal with the yo-yo or stall her out for some reason. Although typically, if you're doing that, then what she can do is she can just like run up on you and take space, and that's pretty good for her because she gets a lot stronger when she has her opponent in the corner. So it's the easiest way to counteract it, but it's probably the least effective. In addition to that, besides making the block, another way you can kind of play around this is by jumping. So if I'm in the air, I don't really have to worry about this yo-yo at all. And it's actually kind of hard for her to do anything about that. She can, come up and do stuff like this, but if you're just blocking in the air, that doesn't really accomplish anything. And she can kind of hard commit with like air throw. But again, this is not really, a very advantageous situation for her. It's just kind of, she forced you into the air, but you're still playing the game. So I think in general, the best counterplay around this, if you can't make her block, is to just jump over it as it comes back. And that just avoids the entire situation and keeps you pretty safe. And she can kind of start playing around that a little bit, but it requires her to, make concessions in her game plan. So I think it's a pretty safe way of playing around the yo-yo. So yeah, if your character has to deal with this, then I'd say that's probably the best way to play around it. If your character doesn't have to deal with this, then that's great for you. One thing to keep in mind, though, if you have a character who can force her to block, that's actually kind of a blessing and a curse. Because, like I mentioned before, this yo-yo is on a timer. So by default, this is one of the best fireballs in the game, but she only has it every 4 seconds. So it's kind of balanced out that way. But if you play a character like Axel or Happy Chaos who makes her block a lot, then she can throw the fireball a lot more often. And so in those matchups, she kind of gets access to a really strong poke a lot more often. So it's a bit of a trade-off for her. And yeah, she ends up being a pretty flexible character because of it. So ideally, she wants to set the pace with this, but she's fine also just doing this and playing footsies with her great buttons. Good movement speed, good air options. So either mode of play is pretty strong. But yeah, by default, Bridget just kind of wants to do this and go into rolling movement and cancel into JH. JH, I should probably talk about. The reason she wants to JH out of this is that JH is basically her only disjoint. So if she's doing something like, let me see. If the opponent's like 6P'ing her, and I try to 5H, I'm just gonna get hit out of it. If I try to far slash, I get hit out of it. I can 2S, which is a pretty good option, but it's not quite as long range as the other ones, and it has its own problems. But if I go for this, I can actually just hit her out of it, and because it has a disjoint, sometimes it'll counter hit 6Ps, sometimes it'll clash. It's not a huge disjoint. It's only about, like, I'd say a quarter of the length of the yo-yos, so it has to be spaced pretty well to beat some 6Ps. So characters like Testament can kind of still afford to 6P her because their 6Ps are so huge. But it's hard, and it's kind of a risk. But in general, once the yo-yo is out, she really likes doing this. It's just a default poke that's very safe and very hard to contest. And even if your character does start contesting it, she has other options out of it that are also really powerful. So for instance, instead of doing that, I can cancel into JP and do 2S. And the idea there is just like, if you're gonna oh my god. If you're gonna 6P me, I need to space this right, I'm sorry.
You're good. The lab's always been the hardest matchup for everybody.
Yeah. So I can kind of just do that, like go into like JP, so I land right outside of 6P range and hit you with 2S as you're doing the 6P. So so basically she gets a really long range high. She gets kind of a scary mix up with a low. She can even do just like, jump and punish that way. A lot of Bridget players, what they'll do this. So they'll go into Roger Drop. I think this is crap, personally. I think this is a really bad option. And the reason for that is this is punishable. This is, I think, -5. It's either -5 or -6, but I think it's -5. So every character can punish it at close range. So if you want it to be safe, you need a yo-yo to be coming back. To be fair, it does space pretty well, but Most characters can at least afford to start their turn unless I do something like immediate DP, which I don't want to do that as Bridget.
Mm.
Uh, so I don't think that's a very good option, but a lot of Bridgets will represent that, so it's something to keep in mind. And also, I guess I should talk about that real quick. If you want to know how to counterplay that, so if Bridget is doing something like this, it's actually not too hard to deal with. You got a lot of ways you can deal with it. You can air throw her. You can actually still 6P this. The timing's a little different, so you do have to make some adjustments. And in practice, it's not as easy as just like one size fits all. It's still a mix-up. I just think because it has such low reward on block, it's just not really worth going for when you consider the risk of it. But it is still an option that you need to know how to play around. What?
The momentum, it always is carrying her forward, right? Is it usually very similar on the momentum scale, or are there like variations on that? Because I know like it's very similar like Chip J2K, I feel like, in trying to anti-air.
Yeah, if she's just like jumping straight up, then it goes straight down. But otherwise, yeah, the momentum carries over. So it carries pretty far when she's doing rolling movement, so she can do it like even from like here. And actually, it's kind of hard to see, but it has a shockwave, so it even hits from pretty far out. So she can start up almost immediately at a lot of ranges. Yeah, and like that didn't hit, but that was like a few pixels away from actually making contact. So yeah, the momentum carries over, and that is another thing that makes it a little hard to deal with. So I think in general, like it's an option, and it's not an easy option to deal with, but I just don't like doing it because it's not really a threat, if that makes sense. Like she needs to spend meter to get reward off it. She needs to spend meter to make it safe, and she just has so many good uses for meter, and she has so many already good mix-ups she can do off of this that beat 6P. That I think is just kind of a waste of time, but it's something to keep in mind, know how to deal with. A lot of Bridget players will also jump first before doing this, and I think this is a lot worse. And if you're playing against a Bridget who is always jumping before they do this, they're probably going for something like JS, and hoping just to get like a jump in at kind of a weird angle. But against players who do this, honestly, just 6P. Sometimes you'll eat the Roger Dop and you'll get punished for it, but again, it's not very good of a punish. And if you 6P her, you can kind of make her explode as some characters. So generally, I think it's better for Bridget to just do it grounded. But you will need to be able to deal with Bridgets who do it from the air as well. And just know that that gives her a bit of a different trajectory. One thing to keep in mind too is this button, the one that they use to jump in a lot, this has no disjoint on it whatsoever. So you can 6P her out of this really easily, or just hit her with like any anti-air button. So if you have a quick 5P, like think like Leo 5P or Ram 5P, those are also really good options against rolling movement. I can't really show it on Bridget because her 5P is 8 frames and doesn't anti-air, so can't really demonstrate it here. But yeah, if you're playing a character who's a good 5P, which is almost all of the cast, then that's probably actually your best option against Bridgets who are just trying to get away with rolling movement in neutral. You will get counter hit by this, but everything else it'll beat. So, and you know, you can kind of delay so that you block if she does that, and then if she tries to get fancy with it and go for the actual rolling movement, you can just 5P her out of it. But yeah, that's kind of the general game plan around Yo-Yo. So you're trying to set it if you have time and space and are able to get away with it, so you can jail them into mix-ups. But if you can't, you're fine just throwing the fireball and like doing some movement tricks with this to kind of fake people out and just play kind of a more zoning game. But besides the yo-yo, so that's the main part of her neutral, I think. But once you've kind of dealt with yo-yo, or just in situations where she isn't able to go for yo-yo, so if you're staying close to her, she doesn't have time to throw the yo-yo out. And even at long range, a lot of characters, like this range looks good for yo-yo, but characters like Sin can do like Elk Hunt here, or Testament can hit with Grave Reaper. So a lot of the time she doesn't have the space in neutral to actually effectively go for this. So she's got to resort to playing neutral like other characters do. And fortunately for Bridget, she plays neutral really, really well, even without yo-yo. So generally what you're going to see is her neutrals kind of revolves around this button, 2S. because 2S does not lose to 6P. Everything else loses to 6P. So if I have, she's set up to do this, I can, well, okay, I'm bad at 6Ping Bridget, but yeah, you can 6P it really easily. And this button, you can actually hit it really late. I don't know why I'm so bad at this. I was literally practicing this before the section.
It can be tricky, honestly.
Let me record. Okay, I'm gonna do it so she jumps. That's easier to see. Yeah, you can do it like really late, and it still punishes because it has a huge lingering hurt box, and you can even be out of range. So like I can kick her after it comes out, and it'll still hit her. So it stays on screen, like the hurt box stays on screen for a really long time. And so this move, it's also really vulnerable to IADs. It's vulnerable to low profiles. Bridget doesn't have one, but again, think like Stun Dipper, Elk Hunt. Those are also really good moves for going under it. But like by default, you can 6P this, and that's a really good way of dealing with it. And then the rest of her buttons also run into this problem. So, Far Slash is the same thing. It's just very easy to 6P. And those are kind of her main pokes. But 2S doesn't have this problem. It's good range, good startup, long range, double hitting low. So this is kind of her best poke in neutral. And a lot of times what she'll try to do is she's trying to take space. She'll do dash 2S, which covers, she has a lot of initial dash acceleration. So this is a good way of just taking space and kind of walling people out if they're trying to play footsies with you. And if you run into this button, okay, that's not conversion, but she can do this, and she gets decent Okozemi off it, so it's pretty threatening. And if it hits counter hit, she gets a little bit of a better version of that. It's not the end of the world for most characters, but it's good. So yeah, this button is kind of how she plays neutral. And it does have its drawbacks, so, if I set her to do this, there are ways to punish this. You can actually whip punish it if you're fast. Let me see if I can get the punish text to show up. Yeah, you can actually whip punish this on a lot of characters. It's hard, but it does have enough recovery to do it. And you can also just IAD in if you think she's going to do it, and punish her with your IAD of choice. So it's a really good button, and it beats a lot of things, but there are universal answers to this for most characters, besides like Potemkin. And even Potemkin can actually make a fist over it on a read. But yeah, for the most part, she wants to just be doing this in neutral, and then she'll also do stuff like dashing up a 2K, or dashing up a 5K to do pressure, dash up 2P just to wall people out. And then once you've discouraged people from doing 6P, she wants to get away with pressing these buttons, because these are really, really threatening buttons. I mean, 5H literally goes half screen. Far Slash doesn't go quite as far, but in exchange, it recovers a lot faster. So she wants to be able to use these buttons as much as possible. So neutral, or like footsies against Bridget is kind of just an RPS where you are trying to represent 5P if you can, or trying to represent 6P against her if you can, and then she's trying to get away with using options that lose to 6P by conditioning you with 2S. And then she'll also do stuff like just throwing out pokes and doing the rolling movement stuff I mentioned before. And she also has some really strong burst options with Scooter. So in neutral, Scooter is actually a pretty decent tool. You can do stuff like this, and that is decently safe. You can mash on it if you're really fast, and it'll lose to preempted buttons, but it's very hard for most characters to get a punish. It's -6, but at this range, that's basically just completely safe. So if it's spaced well, Scooter is really good. And if you condition people with this, then she can also do stuff like slow Scooter into plus on block and get pressure off that. So yeah, this kind of meandered around a lot, but that's generally how she wants to play neutral. Is she goes for the yo-yo stuff, and when she can't, she just plays footsies and is trying to play a more reactive kind of wall out style where you just slowly walk your opponent into the corner, and then once your opponent's in the corner, you can start running your pressure. So transition, this is probably a good time to start talking about how Bridget runs pressure and how you can deal with that. So British pressure main screen is not super threatening, I think. And the reason is because it pushes people out pretty far. So if I do this, pretty standard pressure sequence, she's already been pushed like 2/3 of the screen. So I can't really follow up from this range very effectively. I can do stuff like dash up 5H, but you can walk back, you can ID over. It's just, it doesn't really give me a whole lot, and you can take space, or you can give up space in an attempt to make me whiff buttons and then punish me for that. So mid screen, her pressure is nothing special. I mean, it's about the same as most other characters, but in the corners where her pressure really gets threatening, because now if she does this, you no longer have the option to back up. So you are forced to play at this range. And for most characters, playing at this range is really bad for them against Bridget, because she's got 5H, she's got the yo-yo, she's got JH stuff that hits perfectly here. She can run up with 2S. So in the corner, that's kind of her general idea. She doesn't mind the fact that this ends with yo-yo, because now she's playing the game where she wants to be. But overall, I think the important thing when dealing with Bridget's pressure in the corner is it's not infinite. I know a lot of people call it infinite, and it's kind of close when she has meter. But there's a lot of gaps, and there's a lot of resets that people get away with. So I kind of want to talk about the common RPS points that Bridget represents on offense and how you can deal with those as the defender. So I've shown this a couple times already, but this is a pretty standard Bridget block string. So like close slash into 2S and a 5HH into some sort of special. And that special can be a lot of things. She can set this yo-yo instead so that she can jail into it. And she can also do scooter stuff. So if she has meter, she can do scooter into an RC. If she doesn't have meter, she can do scooter RPS with like the scooter stuff I talked about earlier, where you do this to catch people mashing. And then once people don't mash, you can go up with this and you get plus frames. So those are kind of the main things you need to watch out for, are the yo-yo, both forms of the yo-yo and the scooter. So let's start by talking about how to deal with the fireball yo-yo. So against the fireball yo-yo, it's important to note it's not really plus. So if I set this Bridget, actually, I don't know how to make her jump. Let me do it like this. Okay, so I have her jump after this, and then I'm just going to block all of it. And I got caught jumping there, so it didn't really show. Yeah, she's not really plus there. She's maybe like +1 or +2 best, but if she's closer, it's actually less plus, so if she cancels early, if I do it from here, I'm actually just like minus here, and you can, at some ranges, even punish her for this. So it's important to know that like what she wants to do after this. So a lot of Bridgets will just go straight into 5H, and if you're seeing people represent that, oh god, you'd think I'd know how to do recordings in Stride by now. So if she's doing stuff like 5H, that's where you want to be representing 6P on offense, because if you let her just keep resetting with 5H, then she's going to keep doing stuff like this, and then this, and then this. And this is just really annoying to deal with. And eventually, if she keeps doing this, and you keep not responding, she'll hit you and she'll mix you up. So you need to be ready to RPS when you see the yo-yo. And this RPS, you don't have to 6P either. There's a lot of different ways you can deal with this. So another way of doing it, you could jump out and air dash over her. You don't have to air dash either. You can just take space like that. And then pretty universally good, you can also just dash block up. She does get to start pressure again, but it's not quite as good because you're taking more space away from her. Yeah, but generally, if you want to contest Bridget's pressure, 6P is going to be the universal, just like layer 1 of what you want to start doing to prevent her from just resetting on you over and over. Now, if she sees that you're doing 6P, she'll start doing other stuff. So she'll start running up in 2S is another thing that she can do. And against this, oh well, okay, Bridget still hits with 6p there.
Bridget 2S technically 6pable, but you gotta be in the sweet spot.
Technically, you can still 6p it, but yeah, if you're just doing, I expect 5H and I go for this. She gets a counter hit out of this. She gets a nice reset. So that's kind of the RPS here. But the trade-off there is if she wants to do 2S, then again I can air dash over her, or I can even do, character specific, but you can hit her because dash up 2S takes like 15, 16 frames. So most characters actually have a button there that can contest pretty well. And if you're a character who has a good disjoint button, so something like Bike and Far Slash, Soul 5P, just a really fast long range or disjointed button, then those are also really good to RPS with instead of 6P because they accomplish the same thing of hitting her out of 5H, but they probably give you better reward. They answer more options. Like Bike and Far Slash could beat 2S at some ranges. So it's kind of character specific what you should be RPSing with, but if you don't know, the default answer is just 6P. And she can kind of adjust her pressure around this in some ways, but I'd say, yeah, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but just be prepared to mash 6P on her. If she is, the other way you can kind of counterplay around this, if you're blocking, it's hard to do there because of the spacing. Let me see, I can do it with FB, it's a little better. You want a dash block, and the point of dash blocking for pressure is it's just taking space. And, you dash block up and you block the yo-yo. And the reason this is so good is because if she does the other version of this with the fake yo-yo and a dash block, now it's, and I see that comes out, I have time to start my turn. And so the general strategy against Bridget's yo-yo throw in pressure is to just try to dash block it. So try to dash block out of her strings and then react to which yo-yo you see. Because this yo-yo is the primary way that she steals back her turn. And so if you let her get away with that and you don't match on it or anything, if I'm just standing here and blocking and I'm like, oh shit, then she'll just run up with 2S and jail into rolling movement and start doing mix again. So on defense against Bridget, overall, you just need to be really active. You need to be contesting, you need to be dashing, you need to be 6P'ing. All of the infinite pressure sequences you see people do are all because they're letting her reset over and over again. And it's tough to contest Bridget. Like, I'll give that up. It's tough to contest her. She has a lot of built-in ways to deal with that, but that's kind of just how the character is designed. And you just have to accept that you're going to guess wrong sometimes, but there's not really a lot that's super threatening to get hit by. Like, she's not killing you in the corner for guessing wrong. At best, most of the time, she's just resetting pressure or getting like a small combo into a wall break. There are some situations where if you guess wrong in the corner, she can actually do like a lot of damage, like off, like if she gets close slash unblocked in the corner, she actually does, a really respectable amount of damage. But for the most part, if Bridget guesses right, she kind of just puts you back in the same Oki or worse for her. So really just like it's kind of about just being willing to take risks on offense or on defense and make it as hard as possible for her to just run her standard game plan. And then the other thing she can do besides throwing the yo-yo in block strings is she can do scooter. And specifically, she can do scooter cancels. So she'll do stuff like this, RC it into a high, or RC it into a low. And this just it's just a way of her resetting her pressure, basically. It's a pretty decent mix. This one is technically fuzzyable, the one I've just shown with the fast RC. She also has a version of this where she does RC forward into JD or 2K, and just like rolling movement, these hit on or around the same frame, so this is a lot harder to block because, I mean, you just have to guess or react super well. But the trade-off is that she has to spend 50 meter as opposed to 30 if she wants to do this version. And the pressure she gets is a lot worse because when Close Splash spaces you out like this, you really don't get very good follow-ups, especially if people are willing to FD. And like you can also compare, like if she does the low with 2S, she gets like all of this and then can special cancel off that. But if you do the other version of the low, you do this version of the low, you just get 2K. And like I mentioned before, you really don't get very good pressure off of 2K, so it's not super threatening. So she basically is choosing between whether she wants to make her mix harder to react or to deal with, or if she wants better pressure follow-ups. And I personally, when I'm running pressure, most of the time I prefer just going for the versions that get better pressure, because in practice people don't really fuzzy this consistently anyways. And you can even make this harder to fuzzy by also like mixing in 2K as your low option so that you have two different speeds that the low can come out. So
choosing to try to fuzzy something when it could hypothetically be unfuzzyable is
yeah, it's scary. So, and I mean, you can kind of tell because if she does the unfuzzyable, she does the full RC, so you can kind of react to that. But yeah, it's still it's hard. It's one of those moves in the game where it's like, yeah, technically it's not real mix, but no one blocks it 100% of the time.
Right.
And
it's like a 50-50 hidden within a 50-50.
Yeah, and the follow-up pressure is just so good, and she builds so much meter off doing that pressure that I don't really care if they block it or get hit, because I'm just going to continue resetting.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of Bridget players will try to do these resets on you as much as possible. And I'm going to focus right now just on the versions where she's canceling with meter into follow-ups, because talking about the RPS around slow scooter and scooter in a break and all of that stuff is its own huge topic. So for now, just like block strings where she's trying to mix you to death with this. And for most characters, the way to deal with this is actually just to mash. And the reason for that is she doesn't actually, it's not gapless. There are some ranges where it is. So let me see if I can demonstrate. So if I have her do Starship on block, and then so here, obviously, if I do it immediately after Close Slash, it's completely gapless. If I do it after 2S, yeah, already when I'm spaced out that far, it's no longer gapless. So at this range or further, she can't make it gapless. And this will beat mash attempts. So if I have her do like 2K, just Bridget Safari button. This already trades at this range, and at further ranges, I guess it also trades. Yeah, at further ranges, mashing on it will actually beat it. So if you're playing against a Bridget player who likes to reset with Scooter a lot, which, you know, we all do because it's really good, then the way you want to play around this is try to just preemptively mash on it. And you can combine this with the dash blocking from, you know, dealing with the yo-yo. So I can dash block up and do it that way. And I got hit there because, you know, it's hard. But the general idea is, you know, you're just taking space and you're making it a little harder for her. And yeah, if she hits you like that, she has to spend meter. And a lot of Bridget players like to do the meterless stuff, where you just do the slow scooter into throw. And if she's trying to get away with that, so if I'm like at this range and I'm like, haha, I'm gonna do that, then dash block is good, because if you block this early enough, she's actually very minus. So scooter ranges from -20 to +4, depending on how late it hits, with like the latest possible frame being +4. So if you're able to dash block up to her as she's trying to do the slow scooter shit, then you can actually a lot of times just punish her for doing it, or force her to have to, you know, go into the follow-ups to try to frame trap you, and then she has to spend meter. So dash blocking again is just like universally just good against her pressure strings as a base option. But
Okay.
yeah, for scooters specifically, if they're doing it a lot and you're trying to call it out, then mashing is just a really good way to deal with it. And you can actually, at a lot of ranges, like even here, you can DP her. And because that's the slowest possible speed that scooter goes at, she still gets hit by it unless she like hard calls it out with RC. But most of the time, you're not going to see Bridget players do that.
So there's like basically no way for her, like once you started doing the scooter, there's no real way for her to make that safe.
No, the only thing you can do is to do cancel into this follow-up. And that's, it's good. And I think it does make this into a little scarier RPS, but like she doesn't get a whole lot off this, especially once you're already in the corner. Like she doesn't get a combo. It traded there anyways. Like
right. But even then, like that wouldn't be like DP safe, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So if I make her do Starship instead, find where Starship is. Yeah, I still just get hit out of this.
Okay, so, cool. That's actually huge.
Yeah, no, if you think she's going to do this, and honestly, I've run into a lot of people where I just go on autopilot and they call it out hard, then you can just hit her with like a super, and she just eats shit for trying to scooter. So that's a really good counterplay. If you have a reversal available to you and you think scooter is coming, then it's good to do that because she just can't block. She's committed once she does this.
Yeah.
So she just has to eat it. And like I said, like I showed before, even like at that range, it's not gapless. So if she wants to make scooter gapless, she basically has to do it like immediately off a close slash. And most Bridget players don't want to do that because, they want to get all the meter from doing this pressure. They want to make you block for longer. They want to potentially call out like fuzzies and stuff like that. So
I have a weird question, and completely fair if you don't know this, but with some of the like weird kind of long grab ranges that there are in Strive, is there a situation where you can get back thrown while you're trying to scooter in?
Yeah, you can actually get grabbed at a scooter.
That's wild. I just thought about that as I was watching this. I was like, I bet Nago could like throw her ass out of this.
SQ actually does that, like to Bridget players. I've seen her do it like in real like tourney sets. She'll just like grab Bridget players out of scooter. So it's an option.
Okay.
And it's actually pretty good if you can time it. I don't know how to do it. I've never lapped it, and like I do well enough against other Bridget players that like that's so low on the list of things that I really am concerned about.
Very fair.
But yeah, and I think honestly most of the time just mashing with a fast button. And ideally, if your character has it, you want a low crush button that has a extended hitbox that's off the ground. And the reason for that is you just want something that goes over break. Because like if you try to scooter in on Happy Chaos and he hits 5k, that will beat break at like all ranges. And it will also be, going forward and doing the RC stuff. So like Happy Chaos 5k, Ram 5k, Bike and Far Slash, those are all really good buttons at dealing with scooter. So if your character has something like that, then that's what you want to be doing to try to beat her from doing scooter. But that's kind of the general guideline of how to play against Bridget's pressure. So if you think she's doing yo-yo, then just either block the yo-yo and RPS after with like 6p or IAD out or something like that. And then if she's doing set yo-yo, try to dash block and contest it with the button so that she has to block or get punished for doing set yo-yo. Also, if your character has a low profile advancing move, so something like Stun Dipper or May 3K or Night Raid Vortex or any of those, then those all go under yo-yo. So if she throws a yo-yo, you can actually do those out of block and punish her for doing it. This yo-yo recovers pretty fast now, so you can actually still block Stun Dipper at max range, but if you have meter and you're a Kai player and you really don't want to hold the pressure, you can just Stun Dipper out and then RC and you're good to go. It'll sometimes lose to scooter, but that's just, nothing beats everything all the time.
Right.
Thankfully. And then, on scooter, you want to mash. And if you ever block scooter, it would help to learn how to tell when it's plus, because if it's not plus, if she just if she does it too early, then yeah, it's actually very easy to throw.
Right.
And like she can frame trap you, but it's hard.
Manual
yeah, like I
timing,
got the frame trap there.
The 1 frame manual timing is psychotic.
Yeah, like no one is hitting that all the time. So if you ever block Scooter, just like throw her. And if she does this cancel early, this is -33. So you can like even charge dust punish her for doing it.
Okay.
It's very unsafe. So that's part of why dash blocking is so good against Scooter, because you know you're forcing her to be a lot more minus, and that means you're forcing her to commit to the options that cost meter to be safe. And like if she's trying to space out, you know, if she's trying to space this out, you do this at close range, that's -6. So you can actually throw punish.
Yeah.
Or you can just hit your 5 frame button and punish her for that. Like I can even punish it with like 5k on block. So yeah, you just always want to kind of be advancing towards her and forcing her to make concessions in her pressure because of that. Besides that, as far as pressure goes, yeah, the other thing is just playing around rolling movement resets. I should mention that, because a lot of Bridget players will do, I mean, I do this too. I reset with rolling movement, and it's hard because it has decently, it's not super slow startup. It's like 20 frames, and she can cancel she can cancel into stuff like 2K, or into JK to get like pretty good hitbox. So in practice, it's pretty hard to react to, but it's worth learning to watch out for this, because this is a really good reset for her. And if you just let her keep doing rolling movement on you, she's just going to keep mixing you up, and it's going to suck. So yeah, and then like JK is a pretty good button to contest that, but like again, you want to hit like a fast anti-air button. Most characters can just like 5p her out of this. 6p is pretty good if she's actually just committing to doing the actual rolling movement on block, because you can always 6p her out of raw rolling movement. So yeah, just something to keep in mind is if she's resetting with rolling movement a lot, that is just completely fake, and you can 6p her out of it. But I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about with her pressure. There's a lot more I could go over, but I want to get to Okazeme. I've already gone like really long so far.
Yeah, no worries.
So the last thing I'm going to talk about is her Oki, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around how her Oki works, and it's important to understand what she actually gets versus what people think she gets. So the standard Oki, and I think the best Oki she has right now, is the JD Oki. And the way this works is you get a knockdown, you set the yo-yo, and you come in with this, and you do this. So what you're seeing is, I shouldn't have blocked that. What you're seeing is this JD is a safe jump. She's under recording, so she's doing weird stuff. But that JD is a safe jump, so you can't DP it. If you mash throw, you get blown up. If you mash 6p, you get blown up. There's really just like, the only thing that can really answer that is if I can execute it, DPRC, which she actually can OS against DPRC, but it's really hard. So that's a pretty consistent way to get out of her pressure if you have that option, or just like super RC for some characters. And then characters that have parries, just ignore it completely. So Viken just ignores her Oki, basically, and turns it into a 50-50. But most characters don't have that, thankfully.
As a treat.
Yeah, as a treat. Viken really needed that,
it really does.
Ugh. But yeah, the initial JD, so the mix here, there's kind of two mix points here. So the first one is the initial JD, because she can also instead cancel into an aerial and go for a low with 2k. And this puts her on the ground, and you have to time it so that 2k is meaty, which is tough because 2k is only active for 3 frames, and you're coming out of rolling movement, and it's distance dependent, so it's pretty hard, but it's decently consistent, and it gives you a low option. Um, but important thing to keep in mind is that it is not DP safe like JD is. So if I have her do Starship on Wake Up, and I try to go for the low, I just get DP'd out of it. So you can actually RPS a little bit here if you think she's representing the low option a little too much. You can try to DP her. And some people actually can DP on reaction to seeing her go to the ground. I think Yo-Yo Master did that to me once. He's still the only person I've ever seen do that to me. So I don't know if that's actually feasible, but in theory, you can DP her on reaction for going low. If she, yeah, I think it's more of a gamble, but it's still a decent gamble because like you're not really. Bridget's a character who doesn't really play very threatening RPS because of how low her damage is most of the time. So I think gambling on defense against her is a really solid strategy just in general. So anything that forces her to do safer Oki is good. And so against characters with good DPs, I'll represent the high option a lot more in order to discourage people from DPing my Oki. But yeah, that's the initial mix point there is the JD versus 2K. And both of these lead to, I have her do this. This jails into close slash, which it's kind of hard to make a jail completely all the way through. It's spacing dependent and stuff. Oh my god. But this is all gapless, besides the 2S at the end. And so you do a gapless string into a blocked rolling movement, or at least in theory it would be blocked, but Bridget's kind of hard. And then, like I mentioned before, if you ever block rolling movement, it's a 50-50 between 2K and JD. So that's where the second 50-50 comes from in her mix. If she either does the low or the high at the end there. So you have to block the first 50-50 with JDs or the second 50-50 with JD2K again. And after both of those, she gets the standard 2K or JD pressure with close slash or 2K 6H or whatever. So it's even good for her if it gets blocked. But that's kind of like the core mix-up that you'll see good Bridget players go for. She has other mix-ups that she can do. So she can do like TK roll with this, which is a similar idea, but you're doing a JS instead of a JD, and you can do weird stuff out of the JS. It's not very good this patch. Some good Bridgets still go for it, and I think it's not bad, but the JD stuff is just a lot more consistent and reliable.
Okay.
So
and so also in this situation, these mixes are unfuzzyable, right? They're in that category because you're going off a rolling movement.
Yeah, the first mix is unfuzzyable because both of them hit meaty, and then the second mix is unfuzzyable because those are off a blocked rolling movement, and so they hit on the same frame.
Cool.
So yeah, both of them you just kind of have to guess, which, to be fair, that's really strong.
That is
that is a massive plus of playing Bridget, is you just get this unfuzzyable mix. But you can actually make it a little worse as a defender. So if you've studied up on Bridget and you've watched Diaphone's video, which I've been telling people to do for months and no one does, then if she does this, if she does this sequence, let's just give her the full thing. What you can do is, well, you can block it, but you can also FD it. And the point is, that makes close slash whiff. So, so I can actually mash. I didn't mash there correctly. But,
I mean, like, it looks like a 6P would work or something. Like,
yeah, so I just 5P'd there. And because getting hit makes the yo-yo go back, that just removes the rest of the mix.
Interesting, okay.
And depending on spacing, so it's a little closer, or when it's close, she gets that whiff close slash, but a lot of times she'll get, I'm having a hard time demonstrating it, actually, for some reason. A lot of times she'll get far slash instead. How do I make that happen? Oh, I know, I can just make her, yeah, I don't even need a recording for this. I can just set the block type to faultless, and then what I'm going to have her do is counterattack settings, block, ever 6P. And what's going to happen is that, okay, never mind. this is... I don't know why
Like
this is all coming out
it
like
looks like your
this.
close slash hits low enough that it's hitting her in the feet, right? So it's hitting low enough that it's stopping the low profile of the
There,
6B.
okay,
There you
yeah.
go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that was just weird timing. I don't know how I don't know how I got that exact close smash like 3 times in a row. I like never get that. But most of the time what you're gonna get instead, assuming she blocks, is far slash. And far slash is not gapless. So you can 6P her out of this. And so the basic layer 1 counterplay against rolling movement Oki is you need to FD it and then 6P. And if you do that, she starts having to make concessions. So she can do... Why is she sometimes not blocking on Wake Up? Okay. Very strange. But instead of doing far slash, what I can do instead, I can do 2S. And that still allows me to jail on block, and I get, further mix hit. But 2S isn't gapless like close slash is. So if I'm going for 2S instead, you can, instead of doing 6P, I'm going to have her do backdash. Yeah, and you just backdash right out of it. So instead of being 2 guaranteed 50-50s, you get 1 50-50 into an RPS situation, which is a lot better.
Does backdash happen to cover any of the other, like the far slash or close slash options that you would normally be going for there?
I think it also beats far slash. It doesn't beat close slash if you don't FD because it's gapless, so you don't have time to backdash. Though. But it's also it's not a bad option to just do backdash on wake up even. So this is another thing that's just like part of making her Oki as hard as possible for her to run. Is if you do backdash on wake up, the JD misses, and she can option select. So she can option select like this with close slash, but if she does that, then she has to commit to close slash, and it's no longer a safe jump.
Interesting. Okay. I asked mostly because like backdashes are something I'm really trying to work into my game plan right now. So like seeing stuff like this, I'm like, oh, hold up.
Yeah, Bridget's pressure is actually really susceptible to backdash. So if you're a character who has a reversal and has a good backdash, then you should try to backdash on wake up. And sometimes you're going to be punished if the Bridget is on their game and is OSing. But if they start OSing, then you can also just start throwing in your reversal. And that's part of what makes dealing with like characters like Soul so hard for her. At least in Oki, she murders him in neutral. But on Oki, Soul can represent 2 different speed DPs and a backdash and a 3-frame mash button. And it's just basically impossible for her to cover all of those at once, especially if he's also doing FD and RPSing with 6P. But in practice, what you see is everyone just blocks it.
Right.
And so she just gets to do this on people like forever. But yeah, that's the main thing I just want to talk about with Oki. Use FD, use your backdash, use your 6P. Just don't let her do 2 50-50s. Also, if she does the low option, this is fake as hell. This is not real. Even if I make it like there, I hit backdash, but if I make it so just doing nothing after block, oh my god, yeah, that's hard to time. It's really hard to time. Yeah, you can in theory jail into a second rolling movement and get the mix again like you would with the high route, but in practice a lot of the time. Especially if you're willing to use FD, you actually get pushed outside of the range of the yo-yo, so you end up like, at this spacing, where the yo-yo won't hit you on the way back, and so it won't jail. And so if you see Bridget players doing this low route, and the yo-yo, and like, I don't even way I can kind of show this. I don't know a way I can show this, but that's just one thing to keep in mind. If you notice that you can push past the yo-yo, which does happen a lot, on her low Oki, then you should 6P her because rolling movement is no longer real there. And yeah, that's kind of just the takeaway. That's what I want to talk about with Oki is that it's still good. It's still really good Oki. She still gets a lot off of it. She can RPS against you, but no one does any of this stuff. And so most of the time you just get to do 50-50s one after another and just keep running pressure, and it's just really easy for the Bridget player. So
People somehow still
backdash
haven't learned the matchup.
somehow. Yeah, and that's kind of everything I wanted to cover with that Oki. There is one other Oki I want to talk because a lot of Bridget players do it,
Yeah,
which
I'm
is
gonna
this.
also I'm gonna be listening. I'm gonna step away for 1 second, but I'm listening still. Keep going.
Okay, sounds good. So this Oki was really big. We all found out about this when the patch dropped, and basically the idea here is it auto times into an F-Sheepy setup where you get to do that overhead with JP. That's really cool. In theory, you can make it on the same frame. It's kind of hard, but you get two mixes again because both of these lead into rolling movement, and then you get to do stuff off rolling movement. Uh, but the problem with it, again, is you can just FD it. And if you ever see a Bridget player doing this, and I'm guilty of using this OP sometimes because sometimes people don't know, and if you don't know, I'm going to do it. But if you just FD it, oh, look at that. Yeah, the 2K doesn't even hit. If you FD it, I try to do the F-Shiki. Look at me, I'm just over here doing JPs in midair like an idiot. So this Oki, if you ever see it, just FD her and then like dash or something or try to mash on her. It's fake. It does not work in practice, and all the good Bridgets stopped doing it like a couple weeks after we found out we could do it because people started FDing it and then it was just bad. So why aren't you blocking? Okay, I don't know. But yeah, if you see this setup with the JK into this, that's just it just doesn't work. And so if you FD it, she gets nothing off of this, and you're just in a good spot. So that is the one other thing I wanted to talk about with Oki. That one's completely fake. The JD stuff is real, can be made worse, but still, pretty good. And then the stuff with JS is also real. Also kind of vulnerable to FD, but less so than the empty jump JS stuff. But yeah, in general, just as rule of thumb, FD her out, represent backdash, and try to create gaps where you can 6P or DP. And if you have DPRC, use it because she has to make concessions in order to cover that. But I think that's about everything. Oh, one other thing is she throw Oki. She has good throw Oki, but none of it is reversal safe. There is a reversal safe setup that's like this, where you tied the input of rolling movement behind 2P, and so you block if they do a reversal, and you get rolling movement if they don't. But if you don't see the Bridget player spending meter, then she does not have a real setup off of throw. So, or she doesn't have a safe jump off throw with this. So if you're seeing her go for this a lot, and you have a reversal, you should throw in the reversal sometimes because you'll just get away with it. And I mean, she can hard call it out. So I've started doing this a lot, just like backdashing and giving up my pressure in order to bait out reversals, which is good and still gives me some pressure, but it's a concession. And you want to force her to make as many concessions as possible.
Right. Because we've been seeing what happens when you don't make Bridget give anything up.
Yeah, like I've played rounds where people just let me just keep resetting on them for like a minute straight, and then they're like, "Man, Bridget sucks, dude. This character is top one," and I'm like, she's really good. Like I'll give that up. She's a really good character, and I think she's definitely top tier now. But there's so much you can do to like make life hard for Bridget players, and until people start doing that, I'm not trusting anyone who says Bridget's top 5.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do have some stuff going on, so I unfortunately have to cut us a little bit short.
Sounds good.
But I do have one question. It's a question that I've asked everyone so far: is why did you pick Bridget, and why have you stuck with Bridget? Because you were like a day one Bridget mega fan, right?
Yeah, so it's weird actually. I came into Guilty Gear with Strive like in April of 2022,
Yeah, about the same
and
time we
I
did
played.
actually.
Yeah, I played a bunch of characters. Like I played Geo, I played Nago, I played Soul, I played Testament, and I think I was on Baiken when Bridget dropped, and I was pretty confident in Baiken. Like I've been playing her a couple months, and I was like, okay, I think this is my character. She has easy mix, she's effective. Like I get the idea here. I'm good to stick with Baiken. and I hadn't played any Guilty Gear before. And then I was watching Evo and they dropped Bridget, and I was like, oh, cool. Like I had no prior interest in this character, but she looked kind of cool in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have all the DLC characters to lab, so I bought the season pass for season 2 and was like, I'll just lab her for like a few minutes. Literally like the morning after Evo, like I woke up and before work I labbed her for like 15 minutes, and I was like, oh my god, this is my character. It just like it immediately clicked. Like I don't know what it was exactly, but like I was just labbing combos and stuff, and I was just there's just so much you can do with her, and like there's so much freedom in how you like do your pressure and your combos and just everything she gets to do. She's a very flexible character. She gets to play every kind of game plan. So like she has some matchups where she's a rush down. She has some matchups where she's a zoner. She has some matchups where you just play footsies the whole time. And on top of that, she just has really cool set play. She can do a lot of like she's very conditioning heavy. So like a lot of playing Bridget at a high level, I think, is based around just keeping track of the responses your opponent's choosing in like a dozen different situations and trying to exploit those. And so if you're able to, remember all that stuff and keep that in mind, then she's really effective as a character. And so yeah, I just like having all this like freedom to play the game in a lot of different ways. And yeah, also she's cool. Like look at her.
Yeah,
Look at her.
Bebop and
Yeah.
Blueberry.
No, she's just really cool. And I just love this is like the first combo I learned with her. But uh,
Oh,
wait,
those early on like butt slam corner combos.
yeah,
Yeah, those are so good.
like it just looks so
I remember
satisfying.
labbing this combo after getting home from Evo.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just sometimes they just click. Sometimes you just play a character and you're just like, this is the one. But it
That's
is
great.
really funny to me because like there were so many like super fans, and I see this for like other characters too. Like there are people who are like, oh man, Sin is my guy. I'm gonna play Sin when he comes out, and then he drops, and they're like, this sucks. I
Yeah.
was the exact opposite. I was like, I have no idea who Bridget is, but I'll try her out, I guess. And it just stuck.
Yeah, I definitely think Bridget filled a niche that Strive was missing, and I think that's really cool. And also, I love that whenever they release these new characters, there's always like usually there's like 2 or 3 characters that kind of converge in like, okay, we all kind of have some interest in this character depending on how it plays out in the long term. Like when Bridget came out, it was like the Jacko and the Eno and the Testament players were all kind of like, hold on, we all kind of like this character.
Yeah.
And then they all kind of like filtered out, and then it was just the Bridget players left. All right, well, yeah, like I said, I do have to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Jack. Awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Learned actually a lot. I think I'll have some stuff I gotta lab against Bridget for sure. But I gotta bounce. So thank you. We'll be getting this up on YouTube as soon as I can. I got some videos exporting right now. So
All right. Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, have a good one.